Hello, I'm Emanuel Kuntzelman, president of Green Heart International and an initiator of the Global Purpose Movement. And with us today is Penney Peirce, well-known author of The Intuitive Way, Frequency, Leap of Perception, and her latest book, Transparency, Seeing Through to an Expanded Human Capacity. So here we are with Global Purpose Speaks and our interview with Penney Peirce. Penny, thank you for joining us here today. It's always a pleasure to see you, and thank you for taking the time to chat with us.
Thank you so much. I mean, I love being with you guys, and happy to participate.
Very good. Well, likewise, we appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today on Global Purpose Speaks. So we'd really like to talk about your most recent book. As I mentioned, you've written 3 previous books. I kind of see these as an organic series of ever higher awareness and skill sets into transformative psychology. That's my own personal opinion, but transparency seems to be this next logical step in your own work. Hopefully you feel the same way. Can you tell us a little bit why transparency came at this time and what transparency really is from your point of view?
Well, yeah, I think that my beginning was in intuitive development. And as I did lots and lots and lots of intuition readings for people, I started seeing things that were going on under the surface. You know, that there was something going on, there was this acceleration happening, and then pretty soon, I mean, this took years, but I started realizing that transformation was actually happening, and it was different than change. And so I wrote The Intuitive Way, which is a course on intuition development, and then some years later, I wrote Frequency, which is about working with energy and consciousness, which is like seeing through the surface of the physical world into the underlying non-physical realm, which is becoming more and more evident, and that it's all vibratory. And how do you work with energy and energy information? And then that gave rise to the next one, which is about how is our perception changing? Because that's really what transformation's about. It's about this need to shift out of linear perception, which is, I call this an inner geometry of the way we see the world. You know, we're set up along a line, and past, present, future, and so forth. And that is changing because of the acceleration into something that's totally present moment oriented, which is like you're in the center and there's a ball around you. So it's spherical. And that is a whole different way of seeing the world, seeing yourself, seeing reality. And as we get it, I think reality is going to change dramatically in the way it actually functions. Okay, that was so far. Then comes the next, and they say, well, what are you going to write about next? You know, and I like, well, the word transparency popped into my head. And then I realized I'd been writing about transparency little bits at a time in all the previous books. In fact, the last chapter, I think, of the last book was called Accelerating Toward Transparency. And I totally forgot that I had done that. So anyway, I thought, oh, well, this won't be a very big book then. It'll just be simple. And then I went, and as it started coming through, because I don't really know what I'm going to write beforehand, and it kind of downloads, it got more and more aspects to it. And so it turned out to be bigger than my other books. So anyway.
It became very transparent all of a sudden.
No, you know, and I think that partly it's the frequency on the planet that allows the idea to come to me, but also to be graspable by the audience. You know, people have to be ready at a certain level of consciousness before an idea's time could come, you know. And yeah. I mean, now, we're hearing the word transparency on the news every day practically, or lack of transparency. And so it seems like a really timely idea.
Yeah, that's for sure. And hopefully a few more people out there can become a little bit more transparent.
Right.
Can you define for us your specific concept of transparency? And within that, I know you speak a lot about horizontal transparency, vertical transparency, and then what you call a spherical holographic perception. So maybe
Yeah.
you can give us a little insight onto what your vision of transparency is to work with.
Yeah. I think the way we understand it mainly today is that it's about freedom of access to information and being able to have accurate information and not lies. That I think we're getting so sensitive because we're acceleration of our energy. We're becoming ultra sensitive. And so I think people are being able to see through lies and dishonesty and hiding a lot better than ever before, and they can't stand it. That more and more they just want the real thing. And but anyway, horizontal transparency is the term I'm using to just talk about the freedom of information, or and that's kind of because we're at the end of the information age, and we're still in that linear perception. And that's what we think transparency means. It's about this world, this physical world of information. But I'm talking, in addition, about vertical transparency, which is the idea that because the physical plane is accelerating so much, we are now able to start to have a kind of bleed through between the physical personality, body, and the non-physical realms of the soul and the spiritual worlds, so that we're starting to feel that yearning, or that sense of, wait a minute, I don't have a soul, I am a soul, like I've got it right now in the present moment. That's who I am. And so there's a merger now happening. And again, it's because of acceleration, that the physical and non-physical are merging into one unified reality. And when that happens, personally, you realize I'm the soul. At some level, I do know what I'm doing. I am wise, and I'm connected to all other souls in this unified field, in this collective consciousness, and everybody's helping me and I'm helping them. And there is no separation. There is no fear. If you become the soul does not recognize fear. It's like you see people acting in fear, in defensive and, controlling mechanisms. And you go, isn't that silly? Why are they wasting their time doing that? And so you start to change your whole perception of the way reality is. So this merger is the big thing that this book is really about. And that means that in order to get there, we need to clear a lot of what I call the clutter, that we have surrounding us, that causes us to live in an opaque reality. Right. I mean, it seems like we all, a lot of times, just have these heavy, wet blankets on top of ourselves that we can't get rid of them, and we can't see through the density of all the fear and all the secrets, the lies, the hiding, the masks, the manipulations. It's so distracting from what's really real. And I think people are quite agitated today, upset because they can't connect with the real thing.
Yeah, that's for sure. So I guess to summarize, we could say, first of all, this horizontal transparency is kind of not being the wet blanket anymore, taking it off and just facing up to the facts and being willing to exchange information with everyone about who we are. And then perhaps as a result of this authentic sincerity that we have horizontally, that this vertical component then opens up to transparency,
Yes.
which is a bigger holistic vision of ourselves as a soul, and a sort of vertical expansion into what our soul's purpose might be. Is that accurate?
Yeah. And I think it's very contagious in a way too. As you become the soul, you realize I'm a soul having a human experience, and I have done all kinds of things, all the good, the bad, the ugly. I have spinach in my teeth. I've, dribbled coffee on my shirt, and so has everybody else. So you go, well, okay, it's all right for people to see me because I'm fine. I know who I am, and they've all done the same things too. So let's share our humanity. And you allow yourself then to become exposed. You don't have to go around broadcasting all your mistakes to everybody or your greatness. Just be open, right? Just be honest, authentic,
Yeah.
available, kind of
But
simple.
at some point in your book here, Transparency, though, you do mention that this isn't about becoming totally vulnerable or kind of helpless. You see it more as gaining and expanding power of human capacity, not this sort of classical vulnerability idea of like, oh, well, here I am, and opening yourself to the universe. Is that fair to
I
say?
think that eventually what happens is when you're vulnerable, it doesn't mean you're weak. It's like we need to reframe that whole concept.
Yeah.
It means that you're simple, that you're available, that you're undefended, and you allow yourself to be seen. When that happens, other people around you will, sometimes they get a little confused. It's like you're not projecting anything toward them. So they a little bit of can't quite function, and then suddenly they go, oh, but she's really easy to be around. She's not judging me. And so then they relax and they open up. And it's kind of contagious that way, is it allows other people, if I see through you and see who you really are, and I let you see who I really am, then they let themselves be seen more as a conscious act. And
Yeah.
then you start to be able to see through, not just into people and who they really are as souls, but you can see through problems, situations, snags, situations in life, because there's no surface interference anymore that stops you. You don't believe in that surface interference. And so what happens then, as the soul can actually come through and is not stopped by the yes buts or the fears, then your genius starts to take shape. Your real life purpose starts to come out. What you're built for, what you want to do, is just comes through. And you see it as almost like this weird thing where the collective consciousness is giving you ideas that are perfect for you, but you're part of the collective consciousness, so you're giving that to yourself too. And then you're like, I get to do my favorite thing. And then, oh, goody, I'll do a good job for it, and I'll give it back to everybody. And then they need what I was going to create. And so it's like this synchro mesh kind of perfect fit. But if other people are doing their life purpose, and if they're living their soul, then they're giving me what I need that I don't have time to do, because I have a different thing. And so it fits together so well. And then there's no sacrifice anymore. And that sense of being on purpose and lack of sacrifice, it creates actually joy, and then people become more of themselves, and then they become more of themselves. And this is the expanded human capacity that I'm talking about. And it includes things like all those supernatural gifts we used to think just the superheroes had, like clairvoyance or clairaudience or maybe levitation or whoever, who knows? All kinds of things are possible when you don't have limitations and fear.
So you think this transparency is a way of blasting through our own self-imposed, culturally conditioned limitations and
Right.
really opening up to the natural latent capacities that we all have that are really there, but pretty much culturally conditioned for us so that we don't believe we are
Right.
these beautiful souls,
Right.
right?
I would only substitute the word melting through rather than blasting through. It's almost like, when it doesn't have to be like this forceful, willful thing anymore.
Yeah.
We don't need this willpower anymore. Just attention, simple attention on who we really are. And that force is so powerful. When you make a connection by attention, it's a living bond. And then whatever you connect to starts to become physical. And it's not intention. It's not futurizing. It's in the present moment. You're placing attention on a reality and loving it, and then it loves you back and it starts to show up, and so things are so much easier when you're transparent, actually. But part of the thing I go into in the book is that we're living in a time that's quite difficult right now. I called it the bridge time. right? Because we're sort of halfway there. Some people are getting clear and starting to move on into the, what would you call it? I call it the intuition age, but, into this new reality, out of the information age where we're just in our left brains mainly, and moving into an integrated brain where we're using our right brain a lot as the accessing part of ourselves to get the soul's guidance, basically. And then the left brain as the implementer and not the boss. So I think that there are some people that haven't even started to wake up. Some people are sort of waking up. Some people are a little further along the path. And it's quite confusing because if you think, well, maybe I should be totally transparent right now, that could be dangerous if you're around a lot of fearful people. So you have to still be transparent in an extremely loving way, but not in people's faces. You have to read people really well right now as to what's appropriate, and without sacrificing yourself or backsliding into fear or shutting yourself down. So it's a test.
Yeah, there's really quite a bit of artful means there involved,
yes.
Negotiating how to deal with people these days. But I appreciate your kind of loving, melting approach to this. And yeah, you've made some very interesting comments in the past about will and our misunderstandings of will. That we feel about willpower and we've got to do it, but you have a whole different take on how that actually works through us.
Yeah. Well, I think if you see the world in a linear way, you see yourself here, and then there's this gap between you and your goals, or you and the other people, or you and the world. And so you get this illusion of a line between you and the world. Everything's separate. And that means you have to use willpower to connect across that empty gap. But there is no empty gap. When you see yourself as part of a spherical field of energy, then everything's actually in the field with you in the present moment. There's no gap to cross. It's only place your attention on what you'd like to experience. Take your attention out of what you're tired of experiencing. It will dissolve back into the field. The new things will come out of the field. It's all in the moment with you. So, that forcefulness comes out of the idea that there's an outside separate world, and that you need to have an intention to make it happen, and consistency and pay your dues and all of that in order to get there. But you do, it's not like instantaneous results right away. You have to learn to keep your attention focused. And I think in today's society, we don't know how to do that very well, except onto our cell phones.
Yeah, unfortunately, sound bites seem to be getting shorter all the time. But let's hope certainly your book captivated my attention for a long period of time, and many other people as well, I would hope would feel the same. So you're saying that this becoming transparent and then seeing our vertical transparency allows us to get this perception of ourselves as a soul at the center point of this sort of spherical holographic field.
Right.
That gives us this presence in the now, and we are holographic in that we are the whole is us, and we just get immersed then perhaps in this total awareness of the here and now, which preferably breaks down all these fears and anxieties. Is that
well, part of it, I think we have this kind of either or perception about I need to be an individual or I have to be part of a group. If I'm part of a group, my individuality will be lost. If I'm an individual, I'll be alone. And what the new perception brings you is the sense that I'm both at the same time. I'm a collective consciousness and I'm an individual consciousness, and both are empowered and both feed each other. And it's so elegant the way that works. And you don't have to sacrifice any part of yourself, but you regain more and more parts of yourself. So it's just so affirming. It's so hard. I mean, I'm trying to describe all this in my books of how is this going to feel? how will, in the new perception, a lot of things we take for granted in the old perception will just not function the same way. Like learning things. Right now we try to memorize things in a, bit by bit by bit by bit. But in the new perception, it'll all be there as part of a unified field. And if you need it, it comes to you. And if you don't need it, it goes back on the shelf. And there's a kind of a sense of faith in being interconnected with everything, so that whatever you need will come to you when you need it. It's just like we're experiencing synchronicities now more and more, right? We were talking about this earlier, how things just start to suddenly show up. You didn't even know you were asking for them, and there they are, and they're like a perfect fit. What you want to do next, and it's like, wow, I didn't know I needed that or wanted that, and there it is. This is the way life is going to be working.
Well, I certainly hope so. To hear you describe it, it sounds so elegant and simple and beautiful. And I think that's a result of falling in to your own understanding of soul and transparency. But at the same time, for a lot of us struggling souls out here, as you've mentioned, these are complicated times. It is a bridge time. In many ways, horizontal transparency is actually disappearing. People are, the whole fake news and everything else rampant these days is taking a shot at the very grounds of transparency. And yet at the same time, you say that all of this process is accelerating. I would agree, but I'd love to hear how you feel this acceleration is working when, if we turn on the nightly cable news, we're seeing anything but transparency unveiling itself before our eyes.
Yeah. I think to understand it, we have to understand the transformation process, and that it has steps, it has stages that we go through. And part of the, becoming transparent is to clear the clutter. That's the fear stuff that we hold, and we have held in our subconscious mind. That the stuff that was in previous years able to be suppressed and denied and, remained invisible. We didn't have to look at it. But now that level of reality is also gaining in acceleration. So those things can't stay there. Those old ideas of fear and shame, those are popping up to the surface and coming out into, in an individual, it comes into your daily reality. That's the conscious mind. In society, it's the news, it's current events. So, it's been coming up in stages, in layers, like a cyclical kind of, we had pedophile priests, and now we've got, everybody having sexual abuse and being accountable for it. And things are showing up that were able to be brushed off before. But the other thing that's coming up is the soul. And as the soul comes up, it displaces everything that was fear-based. And what happens when the fear starts to surface, the ego does not want that to come up to the surface. It's too threatening. So it tries to push it back down. And we're in the midst of a process right now where the ego is trying to push things down, but the acceleration is more powerful than the ego, and it keeps pushing it up. And then the ego tries to push it down again, but then it just gains momentum, and pretty soon we're going to have some big breakthroughs. But what we're seeing with the ego, fighting ego death, basically, at a collective level, I think, is it either goes into fight or flight modalities. So fight modality for the ego is narcissism. Well, look at our president, look at the people in power in politics. These are people who need to control their reality, have their reality agree with the way they want it set up so that they'll feel safe. But the other side of that is victimization, and people who say, I can't help it, nobody, and it's just the opposite. They're dominating by being helpless. Here, give me more, but then I can't really receive it and it won't do me any good because I'm helpless. So no matter what they get, they can't use it. So those two positions hold themselves together. We are trying to eclipse those two positions and not take part in the oppositional thing of bipartisan politics or dominator victim psychology, basically. We're moving into how does the soul function? And if we feel like we have to fight in politics, then we're adding into that reality. That's my opinion. If you think you have to fight suffering, if you resist suffering, you add to it because you believe in it. If you agree with suffering, you add to it because you believe in it. So the only thing to do is get to a higher level and don't add any attention to suffering and pain and craziness that's going on right now. But I think actually this is quite healthy that these things are surfacing and becoming so blatant at this point that the polarization is amplifying so that we can all see it and then we can really choose. So I think, your purpose movement is really on time, and I think that we are going to see a backlash from all of this kind of mentalization, left brain addiction, screen addiction, and it's going to be an experiential reality backlash. People are going to want direct experiences of things. It's going to be like, oh, let's go into nature,
There's nature out beyond our cell phones, hopefully.
Not virtual reality, actual reality.
Yeah, it wasn't so bad to begin with. So maybe there will be a backlash. We'll all set our mobile phones down and go out and actually take a walk in nature. That would
and let ourselves have that pause, because here's the thing: if you're talking, you're in your left brain, and even when you're quiet, if you're in your yakety yak monkey mind inner chatter, that's left brain being dominant. But if you can get in the middle, get quiet, stop the internal dialogue. Now you can shift into the right brain, which is your doorway to the soul and into the present moment. And now you can be fueled by your soul and have that realization that, hey, I am the soul and I'm connected to everything. But that's meditation, probably. You could call it meditation. You could call it mindfulness. You could just call it the pause that refreshes,
Yes.
But get out of language for a minute or so, and just be quiet.
Mm-hmm. And as we do that and we open up to ourselves as a soul in this totally holographic, transparent way, I can see this accelerating and happening a lot on individual levels. So a couple of questions. One, are we seeing like a whole new type of human being coming into existence? And two, at what point is that going to change institutions and the way we are governed and work together? Can you address those two concepts?
I think it's not so much a new type of human being, but it's the kind of person that's always been semi-enlightened through priesthoods or, in ancient Egypt or whatever, people who've gained spiritual awakening always start to become more transparent. It's like your skin glows. More light comes out through you. You're not hiding it under this dense, opaque covering. And so there's a fluidity. There's so much more light around you. There's safety, and it just encourages more self-expression, more creativity, more genius, more love, more compassion. In fact, I think compassion is the new evolutionary force. It's not power and money and all that.
Yeah, and it's quite simple. I think we all naturally have it in our hearts. So let's let it come out.
Yes, kindness, really. Kindness and the golden rule, if you will. But so I do think I think very likely we're going to look different. Our eyes will look different. There's more light coming through and around us. We'll feel different. And it's like babies, the way you look in a baby's eyes and they just stare, they're just not hiding. Everything's available, So when you give up defensiveness, something else magically happens. And it's very encouraging and it's very contagious. But then the thing about institutions, I think, is already happening, actually. I think we're seeing a lot of the new soul groups that are coming in have quite a bit of spiritual memory. They're not buying into the old consciousness so much. And I think that hierarchical structures are linear. And now we're seeing flat structures that are everybody's equal, you know, where it's actually starting, all the points are becoming part of the whole. And this is becoming spherical structures, actually. I know it's hard to picture that, but when there's equality and everyone's participating equally, you get a merger of all the different people's spheres into one huge sphere where all the knowledge is contained for everyone in the moment. And then you have access to a huge body of knowledge. And even that group can go into a larger focus with their sphere if they learn to train the group mind to expand as a unit. And then they can access stuff like new technologies, the curing of cancer, you know, the ending of the energy crisis, and all that kind of thing. So I think that it's already starting, and that there is much less tolerance for the, what would I say? It's like a lot of times the good old boys network and the amount of BS that goes on in old style hierarchical structures and government, where, you know, especially in government, my gosh, I can't believe the hypocrisy. Like one week they say one thing, the next week it's the opposite thing. Oh, now we're against the guy, now we're for the guy, you know, like it's like there's no clarity, you know. And I think in these new structures, the focus is going to be on truth. Like not, and I mean truth is like what's really real, what's core, what's based on universal laws and principles that actually works, because lies don't work, you know. And we're going to see that it's dysfunctional, totally dysfunctional. So I see it happening already.
Yeah, it certainly is. And the way you describe it brings it into very bright clarity for all of us. You know, and as you were speaking here, it just opened up my thoughts. So I'd just like to explore one more aspect of this, that as we have this burgeoning transparency and this recognition of soul's purpose, and even filtering upward to change our institutions, can we extrapolate that one step further and perhaps envision this? Let's talk a little bit about an Akashic field concept, or a concept of karma. I know you're a believer in these things, as I am, and maybe we could just, you know, I've often thought most of the world's conflicts are based on misunderstood karma. That large social groups have this idea that they have some kind of grievance against another social group, and therefore we're going to kind of lock into this karma and carry it on forever. Is there some hope that maybe this growing transparency actually could help us to be transparent about our nation states, our races, our ethnic background, our cultural backgrounds, all these supposed grievances that we imagine might be part of our karma? Maybe if we become totally holographically transparent, all of this potentially dissolves and we live in peace. Is that a possibility?
Well, let's hope. But I think the way it's going to probably occur is that I think there is a growing movement, and it is fairly, like I said, contagious and rapid and organizational. It starts to spread, that really when you're the soul and you see through to other people, you see them as souls. And then when soul recognizes soul, it's the same thing. Souls are not different. They have common principles. right? They are based in universal laws and on unity. So you see family, kinship. So it doesn't matter what the outside of a person looks like, because when you see through that surface, mask or whatever the shape is, you see the same core. And souls, when souls see souls, there's no differences. So whether you're black, white, Chinese, Japanese, whatever nationality you are, you're just still seeing the souls. So that's going to do a lot right there, I think there are certain people around the world, and I don't know that they're just in any kind of culture or religion or anything. I think there are a lot of people who are very programmed into the left brain. In fact, they've identified themselves entirely as the left brain and with the physical world, and so that, and they don't want to know about the unknown. They don't want to let go of their definition and security. And as the world keeps accelerating, it's going to be more and more uncomfortable for those people because they don't get how they can let go and adapt and raise their frequency and keep going with the flow of progress or evolution on the planet. And they are going to, I think a lot of them will commit suicide or die, or there will be a kind of a large exodus of souls from the planet, maybe in waves. I'm not sure, mass accidents or some kind of localized war situations where people who honestly in their souls, they just don't think they can acclimate. They can't do the work. They don't know what's happening and they're overwhelmed. And they're so stuck in a certain belief system that they can't get out of it. The only way is to get out and get some work on the other planes and then come back in again. And they may come back in mass into another kind of earth that's at a slower vibration. And those who are evolving now I've had this vision of a kind of bifurcating earth at a certain point, that there would be a high frequency earth and a lower frequency earth living in the same realm, but in a parallel frequency. And people who leave and come back at a slower vibration will go into what the earth they remember. And those of us who go on into more high frequency clarity, transparency, will come back into an earth that functions that way. I don't know when that happens or if it's actually in time, but I think it's probably in motion now. There's a real, if you look in the world, that people have two different realities functioning. Look at politics. We got, anything anybody says, oh, that's fake news. Oh, I have proof of my side. And oh, no way, I don't have proof of my facts. Nobody's going to believe the other side's facts because we have two realities. So I don't think that it's a tragedy. Honestly, when I've seen it from a spiritual perspective, it's like evolution. It's the way things are going to evolve. I don't know if that fits with anything you've seen, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
there's a balance of power. It will shift. Not everybody in the world has to become clear for there to be that kind of critical mass.
yeah, certainly it doesn't take anything close to a majority to form a critical mass for a shift like this. And I think the critical mass is already in place, really, and this bridge time is in full progress here. But yeah, very interesting perspective here. So that really the choice is kind of our own. Do we open up to this new transparent world, understanding ourselves as a compassionate soul with a holographic view and an interconnected perspective? Or do we kind of shrivel up and let ourselves become subject to suffering and victimization and our own self-inflicted perception and really kind of move evolutionarily backwards?
I think that it's up, each individual has to realize that choice that you make now is your forever choice. There's no future. There's no chance
Yeah.
to make another choice, really. This is weird, but the choices you make now is your reality for when you're in the body and when you're not in the body. You know, after you die, you can get stuck in a really negative hell realm if you choose not to grow. I know it sounds kind of wild, but um, it's like in each present moment, there's one choice. And, you know, you have to be honest with yourself. What reality do you really want to live in? Because if you choose to be the soul, you add weight into the reality that this world is going to function according to spiritual principles. If you get sidetracked and go, oh, but look at politics today. Oh my God, you know, like this is happening and this is, okay, well then you've lost that centeredness and you've added energy into the world spiraling down. So what do you want to add energy to? I mean, that's the ethical choice. Maybe it's a choice about personal comfort even, you know?
Well, hopefully we can all be comfortable as functioning souls with a compassionate and transparent view.
I don't mean that should be like rose-colored glasses and some kind of idealistic, you know, thing that's not real. I think
Yeah.
it's really real. When you commit to being that all the way, you do some heavy, deep work on yourself, right? You
You
clear a lot
certainly
of
do. Yeah. And this is very, very serious stuff, this soul searching for our true purpose in life. And you've enlightened the way for us so much through all of your work, Penny. But, you know, one point you make here is the time is now and the choice is now. And it's huge. And it comes down to each individual. Do you want to be in the real, transparent, soul-filled world of potential, or are you going to succumb to these fears and go the other way? And
right.
it's some, you know, it's a choice for every individual on the planet right now, and it's a choice for us as a species. Are we going to move forward in a cooperative, compassionate fashion to resolve our problems, or are we going to break down into chaos?
Yeah.
And I've often said I think this is by far the most important moment in human history, this turning point we're living
I
in.
totally agree. This is an incredibly powerful time. And because we're being shown contrasts with, you know, the narcissism of leadership right now that's trying to just stay self-important and do things that they feel will aid their self-importance and be anti anything cooperative, basically. You know, and the new consciousness where people are realizing I'm part of a collective. I like helping and co-creating with everyone for something that helps everyone. And I think a lot of people are getting more and more happy and excited about that kind of thing. And in fact, I know you're seeing this. I've been calling it the convening, where like-minded people who are have stabilized into their, I call it your home frequency, into your soul in the body state, are starting to show up in each other's fields. Like groups are showing up and starting to work together. Individuals are starting to work together. There's this kind of meeting that is happening organically. And I think it's going to happen more and more and more, so that the overlaps are going to build a lot of momentum, you know, and you know, that's going to be part of it.
Yes, it is. And the overlaps are this kind of synchronicity, the synergistic flow in the middle of things that carries us forward as we see ever more ways to mutually support each other and share resources and ideas and work in a cooperative spirit, not only amongst individuals, but organizations as a whole to create a genuine social movement for positive transformation.
That's yeah. And you're doing so much along those lines, you know, that's, you know, amazing what you guys are doing.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yes, we are trying to move forward at the Global Purpose Movement and make this happen. But at the same time, so thankful for you, Penny, with your broad vision over so many years through intuition, frequency, leaps of perception, and now being totally transparent with us here today.
I'm fading.
I think you're doing just fine, and I've just thoroughly enjoyed this exchange of transparency. As you said early on, just from your beautiful transparency, I find it just really easy to sit here and talk with you and share ideas and an ever expanding vision of this wonderful world of transparent communication in the future. And now.
Yeah, and because it's, I mean, we could talk for, a week about this stuff.
Yes, we certainly could. But I think we'll have to leave it at that for today. I just want to thank you again, Penney Peirce, well-known author, intuitive, counselor, thinker. Her latest book, Transparency, Seeing Through to an Expanded Human Capacity. It's on sale now. People can order it, I believe, on Amazon. Go to Penny's website, penneypeirce.com, all kinds of information on Penny, your activities, events, all the rest. Sign up for her newsletter. So please do so. Any final thoughts for us today, Penny, before we sign off?
Oh, I just feel like it's a lot easier than our left brains would have us believe. And it's not even about belief, right? It's just about having faith in the moment and having faith in our own selves, that we will notice what we need to notice and we will choose what we need to choose. It's so much easier than, we've been trained to think.
Yeah. Well, it really is. Our left brains tend to complicate things a lot for us, but sometime if we can just move over into that more holistic, creative, right brain reality, relax, meditate, see the transparency of our soul floating in the world, then all of a sudden it becomes amazingly simple, really, doesn't it?
Very, very. Yes. Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for helping us find that simplicity and the complexity, for all the great work you've done, for the brilliant vision you contribute and help people find their own purpose. Penney Peirce, author of Transparency, thank you for joining us today. I'm Emanuel Kuntzelman. This is Global Purpose Speaks. Thank you and have a wonderful day.